Joining me today is Debbie Hayes, and Debbie Hayes runs a company called Queen of Clarity. Debbie, welcome to our interview.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Good. It's all right. I just paused because I can just see we've had a few technical issues this morning trying to set this interview up, and we just seem to be, your video just seems to be slightly behind. So although we're not far away and we're not countries away and there's not a country delay, we'll just carry on, hope that it's all right when we get there.
Yeah.
So, Queen of Clarity, tell me a bit about your business and what that involves.
Yeah, so Queen of Clarity is really a name that's been, I guess, awarded to me from clients for my self-intuition. So I think my real gift to clients is that I'm really in the space and listening. And when they sort of share with where they are, oftentimes it's really easy for me to see where's the root cause of where they're stuck. So obviously when we can address that piece, it allows them to move forward. Oftentimes the things that people are saying isn't really the real problem. So like I say, this was really a name in which was like a sort of really the Queen of Clarity was given to me for that ability to really just spot that's keeping them stuck. Also then to give them simple tools that they can use then, give them that clarity of what the next steps that they need to take so they can move forward, on their path as well. And to understand, sort of coming back to that old thing, that word of clarity, what is their is the thing for them, and really in that alignment to what I would call what is their true north. Until we can discern, then there are so many abilities that can pull us away from that direction.
So when you say you work with people that are stuck, is this business people that you primarily work with?
It can, but it doesn't only be that. I work across a whole spectrum of people, really. I can work with engineers in a corporate setting, oftentimes who have the pinnacle of their technical abilities, but then they want to step into leadership. And of course, then that's a whole new skill set that they've got to learn, because they need then those emotional skills to how do I now move into a leadership role. So again, it's giving them how can you do that? How can you pull your team together to all work together? It might be around giving clarity to somebody who's at that stage in their career, and again might have been, say, made redundant and wanting to know, where do I go now? Realizing they've got that opportunity to do something different. So if I've got this opportunity, I really want to do the right thing for them. So again, it's helping them to understand that clarity of where they want to go. Or it might be around somebody who's feeling incredibly anxious around their current situation in life, and knowing that anxiety is keeping them held back from their true potential lies, and then recognizing that they need to deal with that so that again they step forward and be in their path. A lot of people that I work with, I would say, almost mirror me in that sense of they really want to make a difference, know that they've got more that they want to contribute, and therefore sitting in the shadows of themselves, they recognise that they've got to give, they want to step up, want to make more of a difference, but they recognise actually where I am, whether that be through, actually reached my limitations through technicality, reached my limitations through my anxieties, I've reached my limitations as a job. No, actually, I don't want to be limited. I want to keep growing. I've got more to give. I really want to do that. And they've got a point, where they decided, yeah, I want to step forward. That knowing of contribution, and that ultimately a lot of people say, I want to feel as if I'm flying, you know, I want to soar, I want to feel lit up. Right now, I don't. I'm constrained in where I am. I feel limited, and I know that's not really who I am. I want to break free of that, make that, you know, that transformation and that transition in terms of very much like a bit like next chapter, you know.
Yes. You're an EFT practitioner, and I mean, I love EFT. Is that something that you use in these situations? Because to me, it seems something that would work quite well.
In every situation, it's really, again, I'm very good at listening to my clients, and so you'll recognize if there is some emotional blockage that they need to address to how to make those steps forward. And so every client would require that, but oftentimes when they do, you know, and I can present that they're, you know, a tool that they use, and are they open to using that, then yes, definitely go forward with that. And sometimes people would know that they almost need to meet that level, you know, because somebody who's perhaps coming, recognizing themselves that they've got this deep sense of anxiety, then that would probably be one of the first tools that we would use, and the balance perhaps would be more EFT and then coaching tools. Where the clients, the balance might be more around coaching, but then the elements of EFT that when they found that resistance or something that's just blocking that they might necessarily be able to make sense of, pick up there's a subconscious blockage, and again we can help to clear that using EFT. Yeah, and a good synergy.
Sorry, Debbie, I forgot about the time delay. I did an interview a while ago with Pamela Bruner, who's a EFT coach on the business side. But for people that haven't watched that, could you just explain a little about what EFT is?
Yeah, so EFT is known as emotional freedom technique, or often also called tapping, because you are tapping meridian points on. And the way I like to try and explain it is that through every thought form that we've had, there is emotion attached to that thought form. And so if emotions are, you know, perceived as negative to somebody, then they are blocking that resistance moving forward. When you can detach that emotional resistance, then allows, you know, for the flow of energy to go through. So if we can detach the emotion thoughts, we keep the wisdom from all the thoughts, but we're able to move because you haven't got that emotional blockage attached to that thought.
So removing the negative emotional thoughts, not emotions as a whole.
That's right, yeah. And you could also use it in which to, that my style of EFT that I have developed is that when I have helped someone clear the negative attachments to their situation, I like to say, well, should we cross them then? Because if we've reduced the emotional attachment down to 0, that only really leaves you at a neutral point. Whereas I like to do, okay, let's cross the bridge from where you were feeling, let's flip that. What would be the complete opposite feeling to that? And now let's tap in an affirmation way how you'd really look to feel. So again, actually you are actually attaching that positive emotion onto those thought forms, because oftentimes when you do that, it really does embed it into somebody, and they can literally feel it. You know, it isn't just a thought, you've attached the emotion to it, and therefore that emotional beacon is there for you as well, and it makes it feel far more real and possible to people, because they have literally, as I call it, they've crossed that bridge. They can see it, they can feel it, it feels believable to them. So for me, that's a far more powerful way, because you've really taken people to where they want to get to, and then they can keep building on that. And you know, I often then record scripts for people, even though I've worked with them on a one-to-one basis through the session. We'll then you know, record a script then that they can use in between the sessions, so that again they can really reinforce the work that we've done and build those new positive thought forms, build those positive emotions, which again just really helps people get traction on where they want to go to.
Yeah, that I do more or less exactly the same. I tap in the positive after the negative's gone, and I do find you're right. It kind of resets the mind and it makes you think everything's possible.
Yeah.
And I've never come across anything, you know, as powerful as EFT, and I've kind of dabbled in a few things in my recovery, but the EFT, it's just, and it's, you know, also can take away phobias and different fears and things like that. But very few people tap in the positive afterwards. It was something that Pamela Bruner talks about and does. But where I went and officially learnt it, if you like, so that I got the certificate to show that I was qualified. The person had never done that. They'd never come across doing that. So it's just interesting how everyone puts their own little spin on it to make it work for them.
I think it's because I recognised in my recovery from abuse that I went through a cycle of, with different modalities before I came to EFT, of being very good at clearing out negativity in other ways, but it was only ever taking me to neutral. It wasn't really then. So although I was detaching from the past, I wasn't really moving forward positively. So I was just keeping going back to zero, back to zero, back to zero. So and in some ways, when I worked with EFT, because that worked at a much deeper level, because it was working on removing these emotions from my nervous system as well, then the impact of that was far greater. But it just instinctively then I realized that actually I needed to also to build that positive. So, you know, that really came from my own experience of recognizing, I need to build these things in. And when you recognize that in one thing, you also recognize it again, just like perhaps in your house. So you might clean your house, but then have you put the positive things into it? You know, have you put the flowers in the vase? Have you got those things? Have you taken the time to light the candles? Have you put all those positive things in? Because if we only just remove the negatives, we're not necessarily building that forward momentum pattern either. So it just helped me sort of recognize that really and just go, oh, okay, it's good to let go, but we need to build these new pathways.
That's a really interesting take on it. I haven't thought about that. And now I saw you on LinkedIn writing a contract with yourself just recently.
Oh, yeah.
It reminded me of something that I used to do at the start of every year. Jennifer McLean, a life coach, kind of did this thing where you wrote about what would happen in the year as if it had happened. So you would, you know, work your way through it. And I used to do that, and then I got a bit frustrated with it and stopped doing it. But your contract seemed a far better way of doing it. So could you talk about what your contract is? Not necessarily what you've put into it, but just, you know, the reasons for it and how it helps.
Yeah. So again, I very first came up with this concept of having a contract when I first became self-employed, because it seemed to me that if we're employed by somebody else, we would expect them to give us a contract, and we would want to know what was in that contract. So we would want to know, well, how many hours do you expect me to work? What is my financial reward going to be? What jobs are you expecting me to do? So to me, it just seemed sort of logical, I guess, in the sense that actually I needed to create that same contract with myself so that I could hold myself accountable to that. And a real sort of strong pull for that as well at that time when I first set my business up was that my son was only about 6, 7. And I recognised at the time that as a single mum, I really wanted to be present for him. And so I made a bold decision, sort of going back, sort of 9 years ago when I set my business up, that I was going to work academic hours 80% of the time. Now, you go back 9 years ago, and that was quite revolutionary. It felt a brave move because a lot of my clients that I was going to be working with were in the corporate sector, and I thought, ooh, what are they going to say? Who does she think she is? Thinking she's going to work academic hours 80% of the time. It was quite a bold move at that time. But I just felt as though that's because that's strongly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be present for my son. I just had this conviction of, yeah, I can make this work. So it really came from that strong desire to be around for him. But interestingly, what I found was it actually gave a lot of credibility to the work that I was doing, rather than my concerns of, oh, how's that going to be perceived? Because one of the aspects that I often run through with people is around time management. I've developed my own time management course. And so because I was able to share that I had this contract with myself, and I worked, academic hours 80% of the time, what it then allowed was for people to go, oh, well, if you do that then, and you can do all these things on academic hours, then, oh yeah, actually I can do my role within my own hours. And again, encouraging them to go, well, okay, that's work, but actually what's your contract with yourself out of work? And how is what you're doing out of work supporting what you're doing in work? Because I always say to people, you're not cut in two. Half of you doesn't go to work and half stay at home. You go everywhere. So the contract needs to be all encompassing. How does it support you as a person? So as the years have gone by, what I've realised is that it is taking that completely holistic approach. So yes, I would look at my work, how I want to work, what I've learned really works for me. So again, part of that contract is looking at, okay, what do I really know works for me, works for my clients, building those details in. But also in life, what contract am I making with myself? How do I want my relationships to look, whether it be with myself, my son, friends, family? What is the contract I want to have with myself in terms of what I need to learn to bring, life to fruition? And also then what's my contract with myself in terms of, what legacy do I want to leave on this planet? And it's really looking at things very holistically in terms of, how do I want to live? How do I want to love? How do I want to learn? What's my legacy? Because when all those things come together, that's what lights you up. And if one of those things is dimming your soul, it starts to dim all the other areas. So for me, it's just really taking that holistic approach and starting at the point of, I want to live life lit up. I want to feel lit up. I don't want to feel dimmed. I don't want to feel as if I'm limited or dragged down. So what would that really look like? Let me go to that. Let me envisage that. How now can I bring all of those elements into life and see that, yeah, I've got that covered. Yeah. If I want to do this on my health, where am I going to do that? Yeah, it's here. And I can see then that synergistically, everything works together, but often those individual elements actually are the fuel for the other elements. If you haven't got your health, it's very difficult for you to put the energy into work. If your relationships are poor, again, it's that draining energy. But if you've got those friendships and things that are lighting you up, again, the fact that you've got the energy is supporting those other areas. So it really helps you as well, for me, to see the importance of all those areas, and that ultimately you're making that contract, you're making that decision with yourself of, yes, this is what I want. I want to live in that way. So how now can I create that? And it gives a lot of reciprocity as well, because it's like, well, what do I want to give as well? What difference do I want to make? What do I want to give to my clients? What do I want to give to my friends? Oh yeah, that's what I want to give. But also in that, seeing what you can receive out of that, and that energy, and that sense of, for me, it is, I think, and I love to see that in clients as well, when you see them lit up, you can see their eyes sparkling, and you get those messages through of, oh, I'm loving it, and I got a message the other week just going, I'm literally, it said, I am soaring upon high.
Wow,
which
that's
is
great,
just
isn't
amazing,
Yeah, it is. So when you've written your contract, do you put it away and not look at it, or do you look at it throughout the year, or how does that work for you?
I personally refer to it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the danger of, you write it, it becomes, because I don't know, are you really connected with it? Whereas for me, it's like holding that accountability. And I guess as you're building new thought forms, new patterns, you've set that intention. For me, it's about reconnecting with that and seeing, I don't know whether you've experienced this, we can make a decision that when we want to move forward, you can make that intention, but then something goes, nope. So it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
So when you've got that contract and you can see it there written down, you'll feel when you're getting that resistance, because no, I've made this contract with myself to go here. So what's this resistance coming through? That's interesting. So, and it's helping you then to move through that. And I think if you weren't working with that contract consistently, would then you just fall back into those old patterns? Do you really move forward? Whereas, I think there are some things, I think once you've nailed it, you perhaps don't need to look at that. You just instinctively know it. But when you're leveling up, there are bits of resistance that are perhaps going to hold you back, and you've got to work through those. So by having the contract, you can see, well, I've made this contract with myself because I can see logically that all makes sense, but now I've got to get behind this. And although, in your mind you might be behind it, there might be other parts of you that are afraid, that they can't get on board with it for some reason. And so again, you can work through that resistance then and move through it, but ultimately knowing that it is going to help you to move forward. So for me, I look through it, and also then, you might rewrite something, because in doing that you go, oh, is that the word? I love words, and I think sometimes we can say a word, but when you really connect with that, is that the real word we're really looking for? So then you might go, actually, no, I'm close to it, but it might just need it might just need adjusting a bit. Because then when you really connect with that word and the energy, you go, oh, yeah, that's it.
What do you do when you're using techniques like law of attraction or something like that, or you're working through your contract and something doesn't quite go right, and you're like, no, that wasn't how it was meant to be, and I used this technique and it didn't work. And do you lose the faith in the technique? I'll give you an example. I use law of attraction a lot.
Okay.
And my car went in for an MOT the other day, and I was like, in my mind, oh, the car's going to, fly through. Essentially, it did, but it failed on something small, but it still failed, and I was kind of quite irritated about it. And the car couldn't be repaired until yesterday, so we've waited a fortnight or so for it to be repaired, and I've sulked mentally, for for a couple of weeks about it. Like, well, I used law of attraction, it didn't work. And it was only this morning, as I'm kind of, getting myself ready to do your interview, and I'm kind of put myself in a nice balanced place, that I think, well, that wasn't law of attraction that failed you. It was the person that was doing the MOT who decided, it was a discretionary thing, and they decided to fail it rather than let it go. So really, is that law of attraction that's failed you? Or because you can't control with law of attraction other people? And so, I'm kind of trying to get back into sync. But when, I'm using techniques like that and something doesn't quite go right, I do kind of have that sulking mechanism where I lose faith in it, and I kind of fall out with it for a while, and I see my life then get a little bit bumpy, and I think, oh no, I'll go back to law of attraction, because that makes it, all smoother and happier. So what do you do when you come up against things that you're challenged quite severely with?
I'm a big believer in look for the lesson. So it is going, okay, what is this situation trying to tell me? Because then you can still take the ownership of that. And usually when we take the ownership of that situation, we find what that answer is. And for me, that would normally be, there's a little piece of me that's been asking for attention, that's had that little whisper, there's that little bit of an intuition that's known something, but you've probably not listened into it.
That's interesting. Yes, that's interesting, because I watched your TED Talks presentation that you did, and you were talking there about what's the lesson. And that is usually, you know, what I ask myself straight away when something goes wrong. What could I have done differently? And I do already know what I could have done differently with the MOT. But I was kind of lost. I kind of, you know, needed to follow that route. So yeah, that's interesting. So your TED Talks that you did, I started to watch that the other day, and I started watching you full screen. And you were on a stage in a hall talking to a group of people. And you started to talk about many different things. And I thought, oh, I can just whip away from you here, and I'll just put you on another tab, and I've got a video to interview to edit. I need to do that, and I can just listen to you. And you were talking about multitasking and why it's a bad thing, which I totally agree with. I'm always telling Drew, no, you shouldn't multitask, because you can't concentrate on, you know, properly on more than one thing. But I thought, no, I can do this. I can listen to you on one tab. And then you talk about an ice cream landing on your head and that being your moment. And I kind of stopped what I'm doing, and I'm like, no, I thought I was listening closely. What did I miss? So I kind of went over, rewound it, and I was like, I didn't miss anything, because you hadn't actually explained about the ice cream on your head or how that happened. And you went on to explain, and I just kind of sat there and laughed, and I thought, it was me, wasn't it? It was me you were talking to about not multitasking. And then I sat and watched it to the end. But it was a really interesting story of how you set your business up, although it was through a very painful way of, you know, coming to that intuition and that feeling of that's what you want to do. So could you just explain a bit about why you set the business up and the ice cream on the head? And I'm going to listen intently this time from the start.
Okay, well, let's start with the ice cream. I think that's probably the starting point. So I had basically, I'd fallen down my stairs, but I hadn't fallen down as in I'd slipped. I flew down them head first, because I'd literally caught my big toe in my pajama bottom, and so it just forced me to, I'd literally hurtled down the stairs head first, and hence I'd put my head through the wall at the bottom. Thankfully, it was plasterboard. Had it been brick, I wouldn't have been here.
Yes.
And so when I was fallen, I was at the bottom of the stairs, and my son was only 6 at the time, and it turned out I'd broken my wrist, so I was holding my wrist, and so my son had gone to find me an ice pack for my wrist, and then he looked up and went, "Mum, why is there this great big hole in the wall?" Realizing then what had actually, how could it all happen so fast? Realizing I'd put my head through the wall, and then my head pounding. So, you know, he was only 6, bless him. So he toddled off back to the freezer to get me something for my head. And the thing that he found was ice cream. So it was ice cream that was on my head. But I remember at that time sitting there going, well, what is the lesson here? What is the lesson in this? Because I don't think life brings you those moments for you just to carry on with your day. I think they're there to make you look at life and go, what's going on here? And what I recognized was that, you know, I was being very busy, and in that busyness of life, so I'd been made redundant just before I'd moved house. So I was sort of going through all the closing processes of being made redundant. I was getting my son into a new school. The first school he went to, he hadn't settled into, so I was getting him into the new school. And there was just lots of different things trying to land. And I felt very busy. I felt as though, you know, I was wanting to be, you know, super mom, look after my son through all these transitions that had happened. And what I wasn't doing was looking after myself. So, you know, that morning when when I was, you know, going downstairs, it was because my son had never been a very good sleeper. And actually, I mean, he didn't learn to sleep through the night till he was 9 years old. So it's not that that suddenly changed. But, you know, I was going down the stairs at about, I think it was about 5 to 6 in the morning, feeling that I needed coffee because I hadn't slept again. So that was my reason for going down the stairs. And so it just made me realize, God, you know, actually, I need to put myself in the mix here. And I'm not doing that enough. I'm not making myself heard enough. So even, you know, perhaps if we ask for help sometimes, or we think that surely people can see what's going on and they're going to step in and help. No. So there was a big piece of me again needing to understand that I needed to value myself. And so this is where the contract comes in as well. You know, as much as I wanted to support Sam, it was also recognizing that the journey of my recovery was going to take quite some time. You know, my physio said to me, look, like you've had the equivalent of a major road traffic accident, and it's probably going to take you 18 months to get yourself right, because initially, because of the impact that I'd had through going through the wall, I couldn't move my head at all. So it took me about perhaps 3 or 4 months to get my rotation left to right, but it took me a good 9 months to get the rotation to be able to put my head up and down. And then how she explained it is, she goes, well, your spine is like a chain and you've damaged it right at the top. So even once we've got the bit at the top right, we've got to go through the chain. We've got to get all the chain right. You know, and also I'd fallen back on the stairs then, so I'd knocked all my hips and things out. So I mean, there was a lot to process, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was, you know, the incident around, yeah, the ice cream was that. And then that sort of gave me this wake up call, I guess, in terms of, well, okay, what I learned is that in that next sort of 3 months, there was about 3 or 4 people that I heard that were friends of friends, again, fallen down the stairs and weren't as lucky. They did die when they fell down the stairs.
Gosh.
So I think knowing that as well, it made me go, oh, God, I'm actually really fortunate, because you know, this could have been life-threatening. I could have been taken out here, but I haven't, and I'm here. So as I've been made redundant, you know, I don't have that security of that job, but what I do have is an opportunity to make a decision of what am I going to do now. And knowing that, let's say I wanted to support my son, I didn't want to continue in my old role as a PA, and I'd retrained as a coach in the last couple of years, and I'd sort of had a bit of a dual role really in my last company, because I was coaching as much as I was doing my PA work. And I just thought it's almost like I've had a universal shove to go, Debbie, get on with it, you know. And although we were at that time in the middle of a recession, and everybody around me was looking at me as if I was a bit crazy, going, well, you know, what, so you're a single mum, we're in a recession, you think you're going to set up a coaching business? Go on then, you know. And there was a little bit of that around as well. But because I just felt so passionate about, well, actually, no, I do have these skills, and I've absolutely got this passion in which I really want to support and help people. And so, like I say, I created this contract myself, and I just had this sense of faith that, you know, I can do this, I can make it happen. But in that, I needed to make it happen holistically. I needed to look after me, I needed to look after my son. And that, like, ultimately, that gave, like I say, it gave me a lot of credibility, because over the years, it's allowed people to see that, yes, they can say yes to all parts of themselves And it's essential that they do that. And oftentimes when people come to me and they're feeling as if they're, you know, not where they want to be, I absolutely encourage them to build the whole life, you know, not just to look at just their career. Because I've seen some people have come to me when they may be returning into business because they've been off work with stress for 6 months. And when I ask them around, okay, what's your compelling reason to leave work? They don't know.
Oh, right.
So what they've done is they've built their whole life around work. So they've got, you know, they've been working 10, 12 hours every day, not built life outside of work. So they keep putting more into work because that's where they're getting their sense of, I guess, importance from. Their sense of value is coming from work, and therefore they're not building anything outside of work. And then they wonder, oh, that's where it's fallen down. So when I encourage them to go, okay, who's the real you? What do you really want to do? Because it's so important to build the external piece, because actually then if you're feeling happy outside of work, you're going to bring that into the workplace. You're going to bring that happiness in. You're going to bring that energy in, and then you're going to be able to put that energy in. And if you've got a compelling reason to go home, now what I have found is with people, and everybody will know this to be true, if they're going on holiday, they will get all their work completed because they know they're going on holiday. If they know they've got to finish at 4 o'clock because they're going to, I don't know, they're going to the school sports day or nativity play, they will get all their work done because they've got that compelling reason to do so. And what I found with people who work long hours is they're not doing any more work, they're just going slower because they got stressed out, burnt out. They actually don't have the energy points in which to do that, and it's just going slower and slower.
That's interesting. Because they've got nothing to go home for, they take their time in doing it. And they don't see that time that they're eating into is their own time.
Because they haven't connected with what they would truly love to do. And oftentimes when I ask people that question, blank, they don't know. They might know how to turn the TV on, they might know how to open the bottle of wine, open the bottle of beer, but beyond that they don't know who they are. They've forgotten what they're interested in, forgotten what they love, what lights them up. They've completely disconnected with that. So when you really and so I really encourage people to go, you know, you've really got to build that in. And actually the more stressful business is, the more stressful, you know, you're going to have these peaks. Those are absolutely your anchoring points to enable you in which to be that best person at work and to be able to go through those stressful points, because you're going to be really anchored into you de-stressing, knowing yourself, feeding your soul, as I call it, you know. So and then you see people again when they've almost had that permission as well, that when they've gone, and whether it is you know, a lot of my clients, they might have gone, oh, you know, I've been kayaking, I've been to the beach, I've played that five-a-side football, I got my LPs out of the loft, you know. When they've done those things, because they've actually realized it, oh god, yeah, these things, they do light me up, and they've given themselves that time to do that, they see how much more buoyant they are in themselves, and it gives them, you know, so much more I can't say energy in which to put into everything else.
Yeah, I know that to be true, but how many times do you ask somebody, you know, what do you like doing outside of work, and they don't know what they like doing because, you know, they've never really had the opportunity to do something. How do you help them find what it is that they like to do or that they want to do?
So again, when I had my fall down the stairs, this was a tool that I developed because I was in that place of asking myself that same question, going, What do I want life to look like? How am I going to make this happen? Where am I? Right, I better start understanding this. I'd understood I hadn't been putting myself first. So what did that really look like? So a tool that I developed, and I encourage a lot of people to use, and again, I love it because they'll come back to me and say that they've shared it with their partners, with family members, is I create an A to Z. So I encourage people, and I've got a template that I'm, more than willing to share with people. But essentially, you write the alphabet down a piece of paper, and then across you have 3 columns, and you say, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? And what do I want to have? Now, the purpose of the alphabet is to help your brain to go, okay, what is my A that I want to be? What is my B, C, D, D, D? Because oftentimes, if you ask somebody what you want, it's such a big question. They don't know how to answer it. It's almost too big. It's too enormous. And they tend to then clutch on to the things that society perhaps has told them. They're not really what they truly want. So when I ask them to go through this process, it's like, okay, so what do you want to be? So it could be, I want to be appreciated. I want to be assertive in certain situations. What do I want to do? So that might be, I want to do, I don't know, aqua aerobics, and I want to have an apple tree. So they don't need to relate to one another. It's just you really connecting to yourself with, well, what are those things that I really want them to be? And in those examples, you can see that they don't need to be grandiose. They just need to be what's true to you. It might be, and I encourage people to walk through the day. So as you get out of bed, what would that look like to you? And it just helps you to really connect with those elements. And when you can just spend the time to go through that, and when you first go through it, in the first 5 minutes, you might have filled out 30% of it, and then put it down. You'll be in the shower and you're like, oh, I know what my K is, because you've asked your brain to go and search for those letters. What is that K? And oftentimes when people have completed it, they find that they're saying the same thing in different ways throughout that grid. And then I just would reflect to them, well, clearly that piece is really trying to get your attention,
So a bit like you were saying earlier, different words, finding the right words. Sometimes it's just changing it till you get it. That A to Z helps you nail the outcome really of what it is that you're trying to change.
Yeah. And so using that, it just really helps people connect with it. And again, just looking at all parts of your life, what is it that you really want? Because once you've understood that, and I am a bit of a stickler with people, so they'll say, oh, well, I want more time with the kids, say, well, what does that actually mean? Because more time is too much of a topic, it's too vague. So if people have put something like that, like, oh, more time with the kids, well, what do you actually mean by that? So it could be, the example I would use is, well, I want to take them to swim. Okay, so when? Break it down a bit, make it more tangible. Because once you've got it down, then you were, into how you're going to bring that to life. It's like, right, I'm going to take them for swimming lessons on a Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Then that's going to happen. More time with kids probably isn't going to happen.
Too broad a brushstroke. What about if you don't find everything something for every letter?
So far, I've found that people do.
Right.
In time. And we do get creative, because with things like the cues, sometimes, people go barbecue, or, so it doesn't have to be too strict, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's quite interesting, what people do find with the X's, because sometimes it'll be XXX for kiss, 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 or sometimes it'll be XXX in terms of extra, or XXX as in not. So it's quite interesting how people, really relate to the letters, and they find different things. So far, I have found that people do that, and even when I've run vision board courses, that's usually one of the places I start is with the A to Z, get people to go and really
Okay.
connect with it. And then it's quite interesting if you do it in a group format that people share, they share the bits that they're comfortable to share. And again, it's really interesting that people go, oh gosh, yeah, there is that. Yeah, actually, I love doing that too. And it
Right.
helps them just to reconnect with those things, of what are those things I would love to do.
Do you
And
think it works better for people that have a analytical mind, a scientific mind, kind of mathematical, and people that are more artistic and will visualize better struggle, or does it go across all areas?
I found it goes across all areas because, like I say, and I've done this process like with people that would be very logically minded in terms of like engineers, very technically minded. But again, I've worked with very creative people, and again, it gives them a starting point. Yeah. And then if you are more visual, you can then take that to the visual representation in vision boards. But often for, people don't essentially need that sometimes. They've got enough to work on. And it helps them to see, oh yeah, there are all those things. And like I say, when often a lot of my clients go, oh, I've shared this with my partner and we've done a joint one, we've done a separate one, we've done a joint one. And then they've come back and said to me, oh, now I've done that. We've been to the outdoor cinema and we've done this. And had we not done that, we would never have gone to that place because we weren't sitting and thinking about it.
Yes.
And when my son was younger, again, I used to do it with him each summer holidays. And I used to go, right, what's our A to Z for the summer holidays? So we had lots of ideas. And oftentimes, again, by having that conversation, there were things that I didn't know he wanted to go and do without having that conversation. So it opened up lots of things. And it makes you go and look for those things. Well, what is the L? What is the K? What is the P? It makes you go and look for those things. And then once you know, you can move towards it. But if we're not looking at those things and all we're doing is either picking up the remote or picking up the phone, we're never really connecting with what we really want.
What fills our soul.
Yeah. And then this is why people do just get busy, but are they really doing the things that are really right for them?
Yes.
Probably not.
No, probably not. So if people would like to work with you, how do they find you, Debbie?
Yeah. Well, the best way to find me is either you can just contact me directly, just email me at hello@debbiehayes.co.uk, or LinkedIn is the place that I generally tend to hang out the most. So those are the two sort of points of reference that I would, point people to. And you'll often see that on LinkedIn I'm posting different things on there. So
Yes, you're very busy
yeah,
on LinkedIn. Yeah.
yeah. So just come find me over there, or like I say, I always like to make people feel welcome, and it's if you want to have a conversation about where you are, it's like, yeah, let's have that conversation. Let's have that coffee. I'm not here to force you down a sales funnel or what I call a process or the sausage machine. Oftentimes people just want to feel heard, and it is about, I'm here, I think I might need to work with somebody, and it's helping that person make that decision, and if I'm not the right person, I'm always more than happy to direct people, you know. But I think there's not many places where we feel heard and listened to now. And I think it's important. So I would encourage people, if they're at that place, just let's have that coffee. Let's talk, I think it's important, there's a lot of sectors where we've lost that sense of humanity, and I think it's important to bring that back.
Yeah, and I think especially with, the last 18 months with people having to work from home, and suddenly that social contact for a lot of people has disappeared.
Yeah.
And they've become more insular. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it would be nice. And I guess that when you say you can have a cup of coffee with someone, it could also be a virtual coffee and have a cup of coffee while you're talking like
Exactly.
we're doing now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Okay.
it's important. It's important because I think sometimes as well, we can try and create those conversations with friends, but if they're not in the right place to meet us where we are, the conversation can either get cut down or if you've got ideas that you want to bring to fruition and they're not aligned to it, then sometimes it can knock your confidence because they pull you away from something that maybe really is within you.
Yes. And sometimes I think that's because there's either a feeling of lack within them, you know, it's jealousy, but there's a lack because they feel that you're going to race ahead of them and perhaps, you know, not be in their life anymore. I think but when you're at the time of having ideas and moving forward and someone's in your ear being a bit negative, it's not always easy to understand where they're coming from because you're in a completely different space.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd like to apologise before I finish for Gin barking a few minutes ago. The bin men came. I could see your dog nicely asleep behind you. And Gin just went ballistic because the bins came. So we're sorry for the background noise. But it's definitely a live show. And
It's
Debbie,
live, isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
And he is quite far away. I left him downstairs. If I left the door open, we would have been very, very aware of him up here barking at the bin men to tell me that there was people around.
Yeah.
But Debbie, thank you ever so much for joining us today, and thank you for bearing with me with the technical issues at the start that we had.
It's fine. We conquered it, Ruth.
We did. And also your picture became pin sharp and your audio dropped in about 9 minutes, and I will just put a note under the video to let people know that if they can bear with us to 9 minutes, it kicks in and it's beautiful. So, and if you would like to see any more videos, please subscribe to the Healing with Photography channel, and do click like as well if you enjoy the videos that you watch. And so until next time, thank you very much.